I'd just about finished my work on the minutes when I got a call from Ben Moses, who was one of the producers on Good Morning Vietnam. He'd heard I was back in LA and asked if I'd like to cast a movie he was producing with his wife Lynn. He sent me the script called Daybreak, about a young man who's struggling with whether or not he should report for military duty the following morning at daybreak. It was written by a talented young man by the name of Aram Rappaport, who was also going to play the lead. It was lovely working with Ben and Lynn, and we had some good casting sessions. Naturally, I was trying to cast a couple of big names, but needed to make sure the financing was in place before moving ahead. Ben had apparently arranged this through several European sources and was more than confident that the money was on its way. Of course, we needed this in place to secure every aspect of production. And although we were a little bit in limbo, we acted as if it was all systems go, but at Ben's own expense. Sometimes that's the only way to be. Stay positive and visualize all the pieces falling into place, and in the end, it'll pay off. We hope. Since I'd moved back to LA, I hadn't heard from Nathan since his little excursion behind bars, but I'd been in touch with his uncle Emilio, who was actually only a few years older than Nathan and more like his cousin. He had a good head on his shoulders and had always been my go-to person whenever I wanted to find out what was happening with Nathan. Emilio told me that Nathan seemed to be doing okay. I gave Emilio my phone number and address and told him to ask Nathan to give me a call. About a week later, I had a call from Nathan in the middle of the day and in between a casting session. "Hey, Marie, it's Nathan. I'm here with my girlfriend and you don't have any food in your fridge." I was taken aback. "You're in my apartment?" "Yeah, and we're hungry and we don't have any money." I was, as they say in England, gobsmacked. "How did you get in?" "Oh, I climbed over the balcony." Now, I lived on the second floor, and he would have had to perform a Spider-Man type feat to get onto my balcony, but he obviously managed it. Where there's a will. He was then able to get into my apartment because the glass door was open. I always left it ajar so that Pumpkin could come and go. He liked to watch the birds, although he had no intention of catching one. My cat was a pacifist. At that moment, I was feeling less than peaceful as I told Nathan that I'd be home in a couple of hours. His girlfriend Carmen had driven them both from Vegas in her car, and it seemed that they were hoping to stay with me for a bit. I gave them money and sent them off to get food from McDonald's or wherever, while I tried to get my head around this unexpected situation. I let them stay overnight. I slept on the couch. That night, Nathan made a few phone calls from my landline to friends in Long Beach, he said. There was a possibility he and Carmen could move in with one of those friends. I had to go to work the following day, but I gave them more money to get food. I called home a couple of times and Nathan picked up. Once he said they were going to Santa Monica Beach, but that he was looking forward to me coming home. "I miss you. And by the way, what time will you be home?" he asked. On the way home, I was trying to figure out how I was going to tell Nathan and Carmen that they would have to leave. As I slowly walked up the stairs, my neighbour, who lived directly across from me, came out of her door and asked me who my guests were. I was surprised, and I almost told her that it was none of her business. But then she said there had been a few unusual, is how she put it, visitors to my apartment that day, and since she knew I was working, she was concerned. I guess she had a busy day looking through her spy hole. Apparently the manager who lived below her was also curious. If any of the tenants had more than one guest staying overnight, we were supposed to mention it to the manager, which my neighbour said I needed to do. I said there was no need. They were friends of mine and would be leaving that night. While we were waiting for pizza to be delivered, I asked Nathan about his visitors. Oh, there were only two, and they were my friends from Long Beach. It was then that I told Nathan that he and Carmen needed to leave, that I wasn't allowed overnight guests, and maybe they could stay with his friends in Long Beach. He said he wasn't sure he could stay with them. I'm sorry, Nathan. You'll have to figure something out. You can't stay here. Oh, I felt really bad turning him away, but it was the only thing I could do. The next day, a Saturday, my neighbour knocked on the door. Your friends are sleeping in their car in the alley, she informed me. You know, they'll get in trouble if the manager or the police see them. Oh, my God. I went down to the car where Nathan and Carmen were still sleeping, and I knocked on the window. Nathan woke with a jolt and rolled down the window. Good morning, he said rather sheepishly. Nathan, you can't stay here. You have to go. I'm really sorry. Oh, it was such a hard thing to do, and I felt terrible, but I had to say it. Okay, no problem, Marie. We're leaving. 5 years later, when I saw Nathan for the last time, I asked him about his visitors, and he admitted that he'd been dealing crystal meth. I sometimes wonder about me, and you're probably thinking the same. How can I be so worldly and yet so naive at the same time? The fact is, I trusted Nathan and loved him as if he was my own son. Consequently, in my eyes, he could do no wrong. His sweet and affectionate nature, his innocent, childlike ways, totally made me blind to the realities. Comes under the heading of, we only see what we want to see. Unfortunately, positive thinking and creative visualization didn't help Ben Moses secure funding for his film. Neither did his trip to Germany to have a face-to-face meeting with the investors. The money simply wasn't there. So, no money, no film. A common situation in the independent film world, and of course very disappointing for all concerned. But as I've said before, life goes on. I met with a Belgian director who wanted me to cast a low-budget slasher movie, Cornered. Not my cup of tea at all, but why not? Never done that before. Naturally, the director wanted an A-list actor for the lead. You know, along the lines of Tom Cruise. Well, there was no way I was going to embarrass myself approaching agents for any of the big names on the director's list, especially for the money being offered. I'd made my own list of actors who were more likely to consider it, or at least their agents, if the money was increased somewhat. Steve Guttenberg was on the list, but I didn't think the director would consider him big enough. But I was wrong. He was so excited at the thought of Mr. Guttenberg being in his film. I love him. He's very popular in Belgium. Yes, please, let's try and get him. And we did. Steve had appeared in Barry Levinson's first film, Dinah, and was a very likeable guy. I think he was happy to play a role that was totally against type. His character owns a corner convenience store, and every night some of the locals and a couple of customers play poker until they are terrorized by a masked killer. I won't give away the identity of the killer, just in case you ever decide to watch the film. I actually think it's on Amazon Prime, if you're curious. During this period, I was also involved in casting and producing short films for the Alliance of Women Directors, Women in Film, a couple of the California universities, and Make a Film Foundation. But more about this in my next episode, as well as working with Al Pacino and Susan Sarandon. Thanks for listening.